right, we continue chapter 42, and boy, was it relevant, was it practical. If you work hard, you will get this. That's a guarantee. You will access your relationship with God, and you will be a different person. You will behave completely differently as a result. So we are in the middle of chapter 42. And what we were discussing last week at length was that we have this unbelievable ability given in our soul, fed by Moshe, by Moses. We have this unbelievable ability to really have an emotional relationship with God, to really feel, to really care, to really love, to really fear. All of the work that we spoke about in chapter 41 is not only for some high spiritual holy person who, I don't know, lives in a cave somewhere. No, every single Jew has this ability to really love and really fear God. How? By thinking, by contemplating, by meditating, by focusing that his power, his goodness, his love. What do we think about? We think about what works for us. Think on what you know, what you've learned, what resonates. But as you're thinking of God's presence, of his power, of his care of you, and you keep thinking, and then you feel. How long do you have to think? The Rebbe said it depends on you. It depends. How refined is your soul? How high is the source of your soul? How many journeys did your soul have to make until it entered this world? Have you clogged up the pores with sins that you haven't repented for? I mean, there's lots of factors. Some people are so refined, they focus, they have it. And some people need to focus and focus and focus and focus. But the Rebbe says, the good news is, every single one of us has the ability. And that was exactly the point we ended on, that the Rebbe was saying, it might be like a really, really, really hard work. It might be like huge, but you can do it. Don't feel you can't. Every single one of us can do it. And that was the main message the Rebbe was saying. And that was a empowering message, because we could feel like, the Tanya is nice and inspirational and talking to holy people of a long time ago. And the Rebbe's point is, no, you can do it. Every single Jew can do this. How long it'll take you, the Rebbe says, I can't guarantee, but I can guarantee that you can do it. So we are at the very top, actually, of the page, of page Samach. We are 3 words in. And what we just said was, if you work, you'll achieve it. We're not saying maybe you're going to achieve the highest level of relationship, the highest emotion, but something for sure every single one of us can achieve. How do we know this? You have a soul and you have Moshe, you have Moses constantly feeding your soul. So put the two together and you can do this. We all can do this. And as our sages say, Yagati umatsasi ta'amin. I worked hard and I succeeded, believe such a person. This is a fascinating concept. I'm just going to take a minute to focus on this, because it's very precious to us in Chabad as one of the 12 Torah passages that the Rebbe selected. And I think it's really interesting to think about this. I don't know how often anyone contemplates the 12 Torah passages, but the Lubavitcher Rebbe did something unbelievable. From all of Torah, all the 5 books, he chose 4 verses. From all of Tanya, he chose 4 quotations. And from all of Talmud, he chose 4 statements. And those 12, 4 of Torah, 4 of Talmud, and 4 of Tanya, comprise what we call the 12 psukim, verses and sayings of our sages, Maimari Chazal. Now, could you imagine, what does this mean? You look at the entire 5 books of Torah, scanning them with the computer of your brain, and you're selecting what is most significant that you want. If you have 4 verses that you can make sure a Jew knows, which are those 4 verses? You think of the 4 that the Rebbe chose, and it makes sense. I don't know if I would have chosen, I'd be so smart to choose, but yeah, I get that. He said, similarly with the 4 quotations from Tanya. You have the whole Tanya, you're going to select 4 quotations. It's also a pretty huge task, but when we look at what the Rebbe selected, we can see the direction it's going. And you'd say similarly with the 4 from Talmud, except for this one. Because one of the 4 from the entire Talmud, think of how vast the Talmud is. Think of how many volumes it is on your bookshelf. And we're only selecting 4 quotes from an entire Talmud. One of the 4 quotes are, if a person says they worked hard and they didn't succeed, don't believe them. If a person says, I didn't work hard and I succeeded, don't believe them. If a person says, I worked hard and I succeeded, believe them. You can say, that's One of the four most significant quotes from the entire Talmud? But the Rebbe is saying, yeah, it is. It actually is. I want every Jewish child and every Jew, in essence, to know. I want you to know this. I want you to know that if you try and you don't succeed, no, not true. And no effort and gain, also not true. But I want you to know that if you work hard, you will succeed. It's an amazing maxim. It's an amazing guidepost for life. It's an amazing vision for us to have. What does it mean, work ethic, living in 21st century America? What is our work ethic? What is that sense of, yeah, we're in for the long haul and there's work. And really on a more deep level, if you will, I remember once seeing this in a letter the Rebbe wrote. Basically, in my words, if God is all powerful and all good and all loving, why is life so hard? I totally related to the question, of course. And the Rebbe's answer basically was because God made us and God knows we don't do well if we get without working. It doesn't work for us. It's not for our psyche. We could say, well, God, you can make it a little easier. We'll handle it. And then, of course, we tell him. But in general, there's a value. We have a value in working and achieving. And that's a healthy way to live. So what do we gain from this saying of a sage? Is that the Rebbe picked as one of the 4 of the entire Talmud, one of the 12 verses and passages he wants us to think of every single day? We believe in working. There's a value to work. And know that when you work, you will succeed. Because sometimes we put a lot of work into something and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And it didn't seem that we succeeded. And we felt like, all right, well, that was a waste. Talmud is saying, no, that's impossible also. If you really sincerely work, there was a point. Something came from it. There was an advantage. There was a gain. There was a reason. You achieved. So the Rebbe here in our context is saying, if a person is sincerely working to feel a relationship with God, to really love God, to really fear God, it's going to happen. God doing says atomic. If you work hard, you will succeed. Now, it's very interesting. If you look at the language of our sages, it's yagati umatsasi, which means I worked hard and I found. Not I worked hard and I achieved. Not as I translated it loosely, I worked hard and I succeeded. That's not what the sages say. Yagati, I worked hard. Umatsasi, and I found. What does it mean I found? I succeeded. I achieved. What's this I found business? I found is like the word, as we would say in the Yiddish vernacular, a mitzvah. Matzasi, it's a mitzvah. It's a find, implying we have an obligation to work. And God's response to our work is to send us mitzvahs, is to send us a response, a success, an achievement far greater than what our work could have, should have produced. So similarly here, we're working hard. We're thinking about God. We're contemplating. We're focusing ourselves. I mean, we know it's really hard to focus. And we've got so many distractions, and we're really focusing and we're really concentrating and we're really feeling God's goodness and God's closeness and God's presence and his immanence and the response, what that's going to create is far greater than what it should. Because yagati umatsasi. When we work, the response is a mitzvah. It's a find. I don't know if anyone has had that experience, if they'd like to share with us. Sometimes where they worked on something and then either they didn't really feel it was going anywhere, but they saw it did, or the outcome was far greater than the effort expended, even though the effort was real effort. Anyone have something along those lines they could share with us?
Well, I can share that after about a year after we got married, so we moved to New Jersey and I closed all my stores and just got rid of everything. And for about a year, we're just living here from there and didn't really know what we were going to do. And then my husband got me into this homestay business. And for 2 years, we worked and worked and worked for no money, just a dream. And it took about 2 years before it just picked up. And who would have thought that at my age, I would be still sitting here and working? But Baruch Hashem, I remember what the Rebbe said. We're not supposed to retire ever. So Hashem gave me something that I can do from home, bring parnasa, And yeah, it was very, very hard work for 2 years, but then, Baruch Hashem, now I see the totzaot.
And hopefully many of us have also had those experiences. Beautiful. So the Rebbe goes on, Ukidirsiv, and as is written, Im tivakshena kakesef uchematmoinim techapsena. If you will search for it meaning for your love of God, for your fear of God, for your emotional relationship with God, like silver, like treasures, like hidden treasures, you will search for it. Meaning the Rebbe is saying, I just told you, our sages say, if you work hard, there'll be a Messiah. But work hard means work hard. I think what Rachel just shared is a beautiful analogy. So she spent 2 years, let's say, not making any money, investing in whatever her business was or in trying to create clients or whatever she was doing for 2 years. And then after 2 years of work, something flowered from that, something blossomed. I know someone that an older, not old, so to speak, but later in life decided to go into real estate. And remember, she was doing it for like an entire year, working very hard, and didn't make one penny, didn't make one sale. And she spoke to me about it. And I said, you have all that it takes to be successful. Just keep pushing, keep pushing for that first sale. And thank God she did. And she's very successful today. So yes, but what gets you to push that hard? Because you know the goal is valuable. Because you, in these two cases, you're like, well, this is income that will be very beneficial or very needed. It's valuable. I'm keeping my eyes on the target, on the goal, and I'm going to keep working. So the Rebbe said, that's how you're supposed to feel about your emotional relationship with God. What does the verse say? Search for it, like for silver, like for money, like for hidden treasures. If you're viewing your relationship with God like a buried treasure that you're searching for and you know is there, then you'll find it. Then you'll expend the effort. But if it's like, oh, this is a cool idea and it's a nice chapter and I think I'm going to try a little. Oh, yeah, it didn't work. Remember says, that's not what Yagatim Matzasa means. That's not what if you expend effort, you will find means. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about prioritizing having this type of relationship with God, really treasuring it, really recognizing it's a treasure. It's a hidden treasure. And we have the tools, we have the map to access it. And if you search in that fashion, you will find. As the Rebbe continues to say, Az tavin yiras Hashem. Then, as the verse goes on, then you're going to understand, then you're going to feel a fear of God. Perush, meaning to say, Kederech shemachapes adam matmon va'oitzer hatamon betachtios haaretz. Like the fashion of a person who's searching, digging away, searching for a treasure, for something hidden in the lower levels of the earth, deep in the earth. But you know there's a treasure. You're searching for gold, you're searching for diamonds, you're searching for an oil well. You know it's here. X marks the spot. You know you're in the right place, but it's very, very deep. But it's very, very valuable. So it's very deep, but it's very valuable. You keep digging. You keep searching. Shechofer acharav, that he digs after it. He's digging away, searching, uncovering the ground to find this hidden treasure. Biyagia atsuma, with enormous effort. It's hard work. It produces a lot of sweat. It's draining. It's buried deep in the ground, but you know it's there. I say about objects in my house, if I know that they're there, I'll keep searching until I find them. The question is if you don't know if they're there. So if you know this treasure is in the ground and it's really valuable and you have the ability to access it, if you keep searching, well, which one of us will say, I can't be bothered. It's an oil well, it's diamonds, it's gold, but I don't know, it's gonna get me really dirty. It's hot outside, it's cold, can't be bothered. Whatever, maybe I'll think about it in a few months. It's a treasure. You're gonna keep working. I work for an hour. You're gonna keep working. It's a treasure. It says that is how we're supposed to look at our relationship with God. If we get it, our relationship with God is a far more precious treasure than the oil well or the diamonds or the gold. A more precious treasure. Now, nobody in this class should be like, I don't think so. If you felt that way, you wouldn't be on the class. But still, on a certain human level, we'd have a lot of motivation if we really knew in our backyard there was this treasure, and we'd keep digging and digging and digging and digging to find it. In your relationship with God, is not a greater treasure? Look at what the verse said. Again, the verse said, if you will search for it, like silver, like buried treasures, you will search for it. Then you'll understand the fear of God. Then, when we're really searching, then we will get it. It's a treasure. It's worth it. That's the point the Rebbe is making here. To this degree, like a literal treasure degree, does a person need to dig with tremendous effort to reveal the treasure of fear of God that's hidden in the recesses, in the understanding of his heart. And this is hidden in the recesses of the heart of every single Jew. Because sometimes you might feel, well, I know there's more spiritual people out there. I know there's more God-oriented people out there. I know there's people that maybe have a better background than I have. They understand more. They're more knowledgeable. They can glibly quote things. The Rebbe says, the heart of every single Jew. Every single Jew has a treasure inside their heart. The Baal Shem Tov says, it's a very famous thought of the Baal Shem Tov. He said, I wish I could uncover all the treasures buried within every single Jew. Because every single Jew is called God's treasured land. Every Jew is called God's Eretz Chefetz, God's treasured land. And the Baal Shem Tov says, what does this mean, where is treasured land? That there's treasures buried in each one of us. Treasures of love of God, treasures of fear of God, treasures of belief of God, of trust in God, of self-sacrifice for God. We all have these treasures, but sometimes you scratch a little on the surface and they come out, and sometimes you have to dig a lot. But if only, the Baal Shem Tov said, halavai, if only I could uncover the treasures buried in the heart and soul of every single Jew. And that's what the Alter Rebbe is referring to here, and that's what the verse is referring to. Everyone, if you don't look at yourself as that type of person, everyone, if you're thinking of other people in your world that you know, they're Jewish, every single one. Every single Jew has a treasure of an emotional relationship to God, love and fear and belief and self-sacrifice buried. But some people, it's buried very deep. And therefore, you need a lot of effort to uncover it. That this relationship, this dimension of our love and fear of God is a level that's beyond time. Meaning it's beyond the limits, beyond the constraints, beyond the boxes of our world. It's this eternal treasure of fear of God that we all have. V'hi hayira hativis hamusuteres hanal. And what I'm talking about, the Rebbe is saying, is the natural love that we all have because we inherited it, that we discussed above. Now, we're now in chapter 42 of Tanya. We discussed this in chapters 18 through 25 of Tanya. And when we discussed it in chapters 18 through 25, it might not have seemed like such a high level love or fear. It's well, if you couldn't create the real one, you get this instead. Access the natural one God gave you as a gift. But as we progress in Tanya, as we're progressing now and as we'll continue, there's layers and layers within the gift of love and fear that God endowed in each of our souls. I think of it like, I don't know, if someone gave you a present. You get a big gift box. Big gift box. Hey, you're so excited, a present. And you open it up and you take out the gift and it's beautiful and you're so happy. And then you look inside the box and you see there's another box there, smaller. You didn't notice it, but you open it and there's something even more precious, something cool, jewelry. And now you're even more happy. And then you look in the box again and you see there's another box. It's even smaller box. And you open this one, maybe this isn't gold, maybe this is a diamond. That's like what the Rebbe is doing in explaining to us our natural love. Started in chapter 18 to 25, and that was the basic one, like the big box, the big gift. And it's a gift, and it's amazing, and it's unbelievable. But now we're reanalyzing, and we're going to find smaller and smaller, meaning more and more deeply covered, but more and more precious levels within the love and fear that God gifted us. So the Rebbe is saying this natural love is beyond time, beyond constraints, beyond situations. It's not contextual. It's not in this context, in this context. It's an eternal relationship to God that every single one of us has. So I don't feel it. The Rebbe says, start digging. I tried. The Rebbe says, you didn't try hard enough. I think I tried very hard. The Rebbe says, see what the Talmud says. If someone says I tried and I didn't succeed, nope, keep trying until you succeed. And you will. Rak only. Shekidei shetovo lidei maisa. If we want to take this enormous love and extract it to do something with it, a love, and as we're really focusing on here, a fear, obviously hidden in our heart, hidden in our soul, are both. But if we want this to actualize, that we do something because of this, we're talking about a fear. We don't just want to have like a cardiac relationship to God. We don't just want to have like, I'm a Jew in my heart for God. God wants your heart, but he also wants your eyes and your ears and your mouth and your hand and your stomach and every part of you. So how does this manifest itself in this natural fear of God, awe of God, emotional relationship to God that we're all gifted with? Well, it translates to the action of fearing sin. Yiras chet. If you really fear God, that means you fear a separation from God. You fear a rebellion against God. You fear going against God's will. You fear giving God pain. You fear harming God. You fear giving God displeasure. In other words, you fear sin. Again, it's not just I have all these great emotions for God. Bottom line, as we say, tachlis, you're not going to sin. You're not going to do what's against God's will. You're not going to say what's against God's will. You're not going to think what's against God's will. So in other words, and this is, if you will, the litmus test, if a person thinks they have a real fear of God, how is that translating in the details of their life? That is what the Rebbe is saying here. If you have this fear of God, it needs to translate and be expressed in the details of your life. And it's not like a difficult, deep, philosophical journey to figure it out. The Rebbe says, it's very black and white. Think of what you're doing. Are you consciously doing things that you know are against God's will? Are you consciously saying things that you know are against God's will? Are you consciously thinking things that you know God doesn't want you to think? We're not responsible for our subconscious thought, but for our conscious thought, we are. Well, yeah, I mean, I fear God, but that doesn't translate into all those details. And the Rebbe says, no, that's not enough. Not real deal. Real deal is your fear of God and your relationship to sin is one seamless flow. And if you look at yourself and you say, well, I have a lot of things I'm okay with, but certain parts of my life I haven't given to God yet. Then the Rebbe is saying, heighten your fear of him. The more you really understand his greatness, his power, his proximity, it should naturally translate into leading a different life. Tzarich legalosa. So person, to get to this point, that they feel enough, that they fear enough, that they make different choices in their life. So for that, we need to reveal her, this fear, this emotion. Mimatzpune binas halev, from the hidden recesses of the heart. It's there. It's buried in your heart. It's buried in the recesses of your heart. It might be buried miles deep in the recesses of your heart. Shalamayla me'azman, which we said is beyond time. It's there. It always was there. It always will be there. Lahavia lebechinas machshava mamish. Pull it out. We don't want to be hovering ethereally somewhere far, far away. Pull it out to where? Machshava mamish b'moyach. Practically a thought in your brain. Consciously think this feeling, this fear of God, this awareness of his presence, this awareness of his power, this awareness of his proximity, this awareness that he cares so much, that he needs us so much, that he's relying on us so much. And what we learned at the beginning of last chapter, chapter 41, where the Rebbe says that God's looking at you. Why is he looking at you? Because he needs you. Because you establish him. As we say, the tzaddikim, God stands on them, so to speak. V'hine Hashem nitzav alav. God is standing on him. As we say every time when we bless. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam. Blessed are you, God, Elokeinu, our God. We are acknowledging you as God. We are making you God, and then melech ha'olam. Then you're the king over the world. Through our acknowledgement, through our acceptance, then you can be the sovereign over the entire world. So God has made himself vulnerable to us. God has made himself need us. And God is looking at us and scrutinizing, are we getting our act together? Are we serving him? Are we serving him completely? Are we giving him our mind, our heart, our actions, our speech, our conscious thoughts? So when I think these thoughts, it should help me pull out the fear that I have buried deep. But buried deep isn't very helpful. It's not very useful. It's there. It's useful because I know I have it, but I need to access it. And when I think these thoughts, I can access it so it becomes a conscious thought in my mind. And from there, I'll behave differently. Laha'amikba machshavto meshech zman ma mamish asher tesei pu'ulasa me'akayach ha'pol mamish. So the Rebbe says, so you got this in your brain. You're thinking the thought. I just gave you many, many, many thoughts you could think about. So you're thinking whatever one of those thoughts I just threw at you resonates. You're thinking the thought. How long are you thinking the thought? As long as you need to, the Rebbe is saying. It's interesting. If you look at the word here, the Rebbe says twice, really 3 times in a row. 3 lines in a row, the Rebbe uses the same word, mamish. Mamish means like for real, tangibly. Mamashus means tangibility. Something that has substance. 3 lines in a row. If anyone's looking inside besides me, machshava mamish, meshech zman ma mamish, elapoyo mamish. Meaning the Rebbe is saying, I mean this literally. I'm not saying words. I'm not wasting my words. I'm not writing this to have beautiful thoughts that you can make a dvar Torah, a nice speech out of. That's not the point in any of this. It's about mamish, mamish, mamish. Literally 3 lines in a row using that same word. I mean this very factually, very literally. Meaning, I want you to do this. And this is very, very doable. So the Rebbe said, going back for you to see the Rebbe's intensity of mamish, that you should literally, mamish, bring this into the thoughts in your brain, to dwell in it, to delve in it, in your thoughts, for a literal span of time until it comes out. You know, it did our job, and it comes out from the potential, from a thought, into actuality. Mamish, literally. Now, what do we mean into actuality? Literally, what's the literal, actual fulfillment of this thought? That you lead a different life because of it. None of us are too big for this, and none of us are too small for this. No one can say, no, I don't have this ability. The Rebbe said every single one of us does. Don't have that hook to lie on. And none of us could say, oh, me, I'm so God-fearing. I'm such a great servant of God. I serve God all day long. This isn't talking to me. The Rebbe says, no, mamish. None of us are too small. We all can do this. None of us are too big. We all need to do this. For wherever you're holding, there's always more. There's always higher. There's always closer to God. So, mamish, this is coming to literal actuality. Dahainu means to say, li yosur meirav asay tov machshava dibra ma'isa. To turn from bad, to do good, to keep away from the prohibitions, and to do all the positive commandments in your thought, in your speech, and in your action. Why? What's motivating me? Some very high, lofty thought? The Rebbe says some very pragmatic thought. V'pnei havaya, because of God, hatsoife, umapit, uma'azin, umakchiv, umavin. If anyone was counting, I just said 5 words that seemingly are saying the same point. And we know the Alter Rebbe was so careful in Tanya. I pointed out in this chapter where the Alter Rebbe spent 6 weeks contemplating to add one letter, a vav, or not. Vav means and. He spent 6 weeks contemplating that vav, and now he gave us 5 words that might sound like synonyms, but they're all reflecting different aspects of how you should think of how God is there. He's looking at you, and he's watching you, and he's listening to you, and he's intently listening to you, and he's understanding. Akol ma'asehu, every one of your actions. Hashem is watching and watching intently, scrutinizing, listening and listening intently, deeply contemplating to understand all of your actions. Why is God giving me so much attention? Why is he looking at me so carefully? Because he loves you? Because you're his only child? Because you're him? Because he's implanting in you all of his deepest kaichos, all of his deepest powers? Because he needs you. Because he set up the world in such a way that he's vulnerable to you. That your actions pick him up or pull him down. We're that significant. Enormous responsibility, enormous merit, and obviously heightened when we generationally are, as the Rebbe explains, the Dor Shvi, the 7th generation, the generation that's bringing redemption for God. The Rebbe says, if you know, like if it's not good enough for you that you need redemption, understand there's a world that needs redemption. Understand all the souls of all time need redemption. Understand God needs redemption. So God's looking. He's waiting for us to do it. For him, for ourselves, for the world, and for all souls of all times. This is so simple and so powerful if you actually really think about it. You don't have to be a scholar. You don't have to be a theologian. You don't have to be a mystic. It's so basic and so profound. And actually, it's the message that the Rebbe told us that we should give the non-Jews of the world. When the Rebbe spoke several times, in a certain period, the Rebbe spoke many times about the idea of bringing a moment of silence to the public schools. The Rebbe said that they should start their day with a moment where we don't say anything publicly. We're not trying to indoctrinate anyone, and we're definitely not trying to bring in, the current religion into the thoughts of the children. But we want them to have a moment to contemplate God. The Rebbe says, why? Because if you don't have that moment when you are forced to think about and to develop an awareness that there's a God watching you, exactly the message the Alter Rebbe just said in Tanya. If you don't realize there's a God watching you, the Rebbe says, you grow up and think the world is a jungle. The Rebbe would literally use that word. The world is a jungle. And in a jungle, the biggest barbarian wins. In a jungle, the more aggressive you are, the better. The more power to you. So if you don't know there's a God watching you, you don't know there's, as we say, balabas labirazu, you don't know there's someone in control, there's a God in control who's watching you and looking at what you're doing, you think it's a free-for-all. You think it's a jungle. You think you could do whatever you want. There was pleading for us to give this message to the public schools. And of course, most public schools, unfortunately, have not adopted this, though some have. There actually are a few schools that have done this, but most have not. And of course, we know the tragedies that happen in the public schools today, when children definitely have this sense of the world's a jungle and I'm, the biggest beast in it. And that is the same message the Rebbe is giving us here. The same message that the Rebbe is saying on a certain level should be given to every child in America in the public schools is the message the Alter Rebbe is saying here in Tanya. God's watching, and he's scrutinizing, and he's listening, and he's intently listening. He's understanding the depth of what you're doing. He needs you. He's relying on you. He loves you. And that's why it's so, so, so important. And you're not off the hook if your actions are passable. He's going deeper than that. He's God. He's analyzing your inwards. He's investigating your heart. God wants your action. He wants your speech. He wants your thoughts. He wants your heart. He wants your feelings. So God's scrutinizing what you're doing, and he's scrutinizing what you're feeling, because he desperately wants it to be with him. That's what he wants. Everything we do, everything we say, everything we consciously think, and what we feel, everything is an opportunity to connect or to disconnect from him. Ukemaima Razal, and like our sages say, again, so simple, so pragmatic, so profound. No, histakel b'shloisha devarim. Think of three concepts, etc. Ayim roya v'oizen shamas chule. There's an eye that sees, there's an ear that hears. You could be, what? Judaism should be a lot more mystical than that. No, if you really, really deeply think about these very simple and very profound ideas, you will pull out all that buried treasure of emotion. And when you pull out all that buried treasure of emotion, your lives will be very different.